everyone, it's me again, and here we are today, barefaced, and we're going to talk about James Charles, makeup manipulation, and money grabbing makeup comeback. Get ready with me video. That was a mouthful. So we're going to start right off by saying, once again, Squish Gang is present, of course, but also that I'm going to do my intros like I always do them, but I know some people are not a big fan of them, so I'm actually going to put a chapter down below into where I jump right into the content. And also, I'm also going to do a Get Ready With Me today in honor of James Charles's comeback. And also because I told people that I used to do these and really liked them, and people would want them back. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do that. Also, thank you, of course, for the growth. We're up to 680 subscribers, about, if I recall correctly. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so I can actually have a community tab. If you have any video requests or that you want me to go over, please link it down in the comments. Not link it, but please put it down in the comments. And you can reach out to me on Twitter. It'll probably be the best way that I can see it right away, because somebody on Instagram have sent me some explicit photos, like someone who allegedly found me through YouTube. So no more Instagram DMs. I will not, unless it's like a message, like with words, I'm not opening them. I'm scarred. I'm gonna be frank. So we're gonna get right into the makeup. Hopefully I fixed the mic gain as well, because I didn't realize that the Blue Yeti software turned the gain up to 100, and that's why the videos sounded funny. Okie dokies. So now we're gonna get into it with the James Charles video. I want to begin with explaining the issue right off the bat of him starting so lightly and once again changing his pitch when he's addressing his audience. Because James Charles, right, is someone who is the king of parasocial relationships. Given the type of content he makes, being so easily monetized and family friendly, doesn't go into any really explicit topics. If he does go into like some more explicit things, like his 21st birthday video with the drinking or any of those kinds of things, it is very like tongue-in-cheek and made appropriate for kids, right? So James Charles's videos never have that kind of edginess that could get him into some sort of compromising situation. With that, of course, we have to understand that that's kind of the content that he chose to go into in the first place, and we can't really blame him for that, of course. But when you do that, right, you're asking for a kind of, you're asking to be idolized, essentially. Like, you're asking to have the biggest reach possible, which makes you the most money possible, which makes you at the head of social media, of whatever kind of audience that you're going for. If you expand your range, you expand your reach, you expand your fan base, right? It's as easy as that. I'm just gonna like wave the products like this, and I'll tag them down below. But this comes into a concept of rhetoric where Michel Foucault talks about this a lot. So once you've extended your reach in a way that James Charles has, you end up becoming at the top of the game, and you become the power dynamic for everybody else. So once you've done that, and you're on top of the world, you kind of have control on the rhetoric that goes around you and how people can betray you and the credibility that they have. This is why famous people are particularly difficult to condemn for things they've done, right? And with that, people like James Charles are at that top now, because this is really prevalent in the rest of the video, right? So him starting off lightly kind of negates that he's talking about really serious things in this video, and later in the video, by how much he brushes it off, he keeps to that theme. So this is already a problem, right, to start with. Obviously, he's setting himself as someone who's like can't really be condemned, right? Because pretty early into the video, he says that there are 20 supposed victims of James Charles, when in reality, there are no victims of James Charles. He says no victims. And now that he's taken down the video where he admits that there's victims, there's not much to ground your previous opinion with. Mind you, some people, perhaps such as me, allegedly maybe, have a copy of the other video downloaded because some of us gathered that it might not exist forever. That's just alleged, of course. I'm not saying anything. Jumping into the 20 victims of James Charles, but there's no victims of James Charles.
There's basically one drama channel on Twitter that started a thread and started compiling a list of anybody that said literally anything about me on social media. And after what felt like weeks of somebody new coming forward every single day, it eventually became the 20 victims of James Charles. I'm not going to go through this list one by one because I know that nobody wants to sit here for an hour listening to me talk about this, but I do feel as though I have to say something because I am just not comfortable with this video or really any video moving forward allowing anybody, let alone my followers, to think that there are any victims of James Charles, let alone 20 victims of James Charles. Because
obviously, like, is him denying that he really did anything wrong, right? And it's ironic to no longer take accountability for the video called taking accountability, right? So when he goes through this video talking about the victim blaming aspect of it, where he's saying, well, so when I was taking my break, which I hate that he says break, he doesn't say when I was forced off the internet to take responsibility for my actions. He literally calls it a break. Breaks are typically choices. He essentially got, like, when you get written up from work or something and you're on, like, a leave kind of thing, you gotta go take sensitivity training. But he calls it a break, which also in that, obviously, language is very important as far as your discourse. Of course, obviously, your body language, too, and your setup and your activity, which is also why it's beyond screwed up that he doesn't get ready with me for it. And Smokey Glow talks about this, too, because it's sickening. It's disgusting. Oopsies! I messaged minors. Let's do an eyeshadow look with Manny MUA's Life's a Drag facelift, which... Did Manny give you permission? I wonder, because if he did, that's like, I don't like that, you know? James Charles' explanation of the victim thing, especially, like I said, there's no victims of James Charles comments, is particularly interesting when thinking about the recent discourse around Gabby Hanna, when her defense with Jessie Smiles and not believing her when she came out about Curtis Lepore is that, you know, 1,000 girls in my neighborhood are screaming R-word. James Charles is really the guy, you know, that says, oh, well, you can't believe her. Girls do false accusations all the time. When in reality, it's like a fraction of a percent. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that the fact that internet clout and potential for fame is going to fudge the numbers. Obviously, you're actually even likely to have more false, kind of unfounded accusations rather than your true one, right? But for him to no longer even really address that the two that he confirmed via social media and his last post were even victims in the first place is disgusting, right? And James Charles really takes an opportunity to hedge his arguments constantly. So he'll go on like a 10-minute rant about how he becomes the victim and that people should feel bad for him because people are seeking clout, despite the fact that his own internet clout is what got him here in the first place, for one thing. But then also to kind of, I don't know, he goes around and he's victim blaming. It's so blatant and you can't deny it. I'm sorry. If you're denying it in my comments, you're probably 12 years old. If we think about this and how important the victim blaming complex is in this video, it's impossible to ignore the fact that he keeps saying, I'm not victim blaming. I'm not saying this. if it smells like a duck, I said this, I think I said this about James Charles last. Like, if it sounds like a duck and it looks like a duck and it smells like a duck, it's probably a duck. Gabby Hanna saying, you know, you can't believe everybody when it happened to be at the perfect timing regarding Jessie would imply that it's referring to Jessie. Implications are important. Rhetoric has such a strong basis in looking at the implications. Foucault, who I mentioned earlier, his basis of rhetoric is not actually on the actions that occurred, right? So in this case, it would be messaging the underage people, then making a video saying that you're desperate, then deleting the video and just completely ignoring the fact that these people are victims in the first place. Foucault's rhetoric looks into intention and what it meant to conduct the given action. So for Foucault's case, if you looked at James Charles, it would be probably likely suggested that James Charles is a factor of internet power and irresponsibility, and that he is the kind of hedging force of manipulation through internet fame, right? So this is like what Gabby Hanna does as well, right? Which is funny with her because she says that, like, Jessie was mean to her when she had more of a following and utilized it against her, only to do that for many, many years after, once she surpasses her via YouTube. But that's, again, besides the point. It's just I'm finding a lot of parallels here between the Gabby Hanna thing with Jessie and with James Charles, because it's that same victims of my actions aren't actually victims because I also feel bad. Just because multiple people might feel bad in a situation doesn't mean that there's not one that's inherently wrong in that situation. You know, because I doubt that any of this is any feeling of remorse or guilt. I really feel like it's a oops, yikes kind of feeling rather than an actual, you know, remorse and feeling of condemning for your actions. And like I said, he keeps coming back to, I'm not victim blaming. I'm not saying what I did wasn't wrong. But then proceeds that very comment with saying that everyone else has ruined his life. Despite the fact that he is still a millionaire, still has millions of followers, still had, for the beginning part of his video coming out, a mostly positive comments and like dislike ratio, right? Because I actually looked at it now because it's been like a week, right? And now he's getting very TikTok-esque meme comments. Like, one of them was, I think it was like Addison Rae explaining that Korea is not Asia. Like, not in Asia or something like that. And then there was one like explaining how I didn't do my homework but like I just forgot it at home. Like, it's a lot of like really satirical comments, which I also kind of find devalue it. This video is very full of devaluing the situation in his like dislikes, his comments. His next video being about cookies. He makes cookies. What? What? There should be a video of him like helping the victims. Because one thing that's never acknowledged here, which is really sickening, is no one ever thought about all the, like, James Charles only addresses the flack that he got as a result of these victims coming out, rather than the fact that the victims very likely, if not did, because I can't find the videos anymore, got flooded by James Charles fans calling them clout chasers and liars and manipulators, right? Do you not realize that your fan base has been weaponized against them, and eventually someone believed them? Because I was on Twitter the day that those came out. I literally thoroughly remember when those came out, and even I thought, wait, we're gonna wait this one out, especially given James Charles, right? Because I am a factor of him weaponizing the 2019 situation, right? I will admit that. I will admit that, like, 2019 is stuck in my mind, which is not due to a lack of effort on his part. And those victims were harmed. And the fact that at this point he's decided that they're not even victims anymore is just so disgusting. It's deplorable. And it's just interesting because I think one of the only people that expressed that emotion properly was Smoky Glow. When she's talking about, like, I can't even fathom how disgusting this was. How you could just manipulate your way out of a situation with kids. I don't give a shit if they lied to you. People lie all the time. That's the eyeshadow palette. So I also want to acknowledge that clout is the wrong thing to strive for on the behalf of the other people. I understand that. However, him weaponizing clout as a concept is equally, if not worse, meaning that, given that he has the 25 million subscriber base already. Before we get into that, though, I just forgot. There's this look that I saw on the Kaleidos page from Butte Bean. I'm gonna try to do that. Yeah. So, James Charles, right, obviously has a substantial fan base. That's undeniable, right? So, the amount of clout that anyone could ever get from alleging things from him obviously is higher than if you were to try to attack someone that either is less in the limelight as far as YouTube drama. Let's say if you were coming out with Shane Dawson allegations right now, or if it was somebody obviously with less subscribers. However, it's interesting that James Charles dances around the clout around his name regarding the videos that the victim makes, yet dances around the fact that he has so much clout that he can ruin the lives of the people that his fans think are wrong, right? Because I noticed more, there were a couple things that came out of the woodwork after By Sister 2. There were some people saying, like, well, these comments are inappropriate, or did you notice that this person feels really uncomfortable? Revisiting the Vlog Squad video 2 was a really, really big one. Yet for some reason, nothing came into place until someone had to have a super, I would almost say, like, frighteningly descriptive video with, like, super clear screenshots to depict that this did in fact happen. Well, I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to say things without any proof or evidence. That's fair. However, you know, it's unrealistic to assume that people are going to gather screenshots and evidence like someone like Gabby Hanna would, right? Things will happen to people without them thinking that they're going to prove it. And that's why James Charles saying there's no victims of James Charles, we're going to come back to that again, is so insane. Because I don't want to say guarantee because I don't want to get sister sued, but, like, there are going to be people that have had conversations with him that aren't going to document it. You might not believe that, you know, perhaps. Like, I get that. But not everyone desires a social media presence or desires fame in that regard, right? Like, my boyfriend, like, doesn't post on Instagram at all. Like, there are people that just don't care for it. So for him to say that people only talk to him for the sake of documenting it isn't even necessarily a good argument to go off of, because there are likely people that he talked to inappropriately even over the last couple of years that he got away from. And there were even people that, like I said, that did try to come out, or certain inappropriate comments that were pointed out, but no one let them be substantiated, given the fact that it was him, that him being James Charles, that was behind it, and he got out of everything with By Sister. This constant weaponization of 2019 is particularly gross to me, because it's like, who are you to be vilified and then get out of one situation, which arguably might have had more truth to it, but given the, like, insanely harmful dynamic around it, people didn't want to push anymore. Because that's also a possibility that I feel like people can't ignore, is there was a chance that there was a pretty good amount of truth there, but after seeing kind of James Charles's mental decline and the harm that it instilled upon a lot of other people, everyone who had some sort of involvement was getting berated either by, oh, I messed up, either by James Charles' fan base or Jeffree Star's fan base, etc., right? James Charles also ignores, like, that the volatile nature of that situation is also another reason why no one wanted to touch it. Because I do feel like that has to be acknowledged too. Is if a situation gets so grim and so volatile that, you know, Tati's scared that he's going to jump out of the window, people are going to abruptly stop. And given the seriousness of that situation as well, as far as how it affected James Charles, that people are going to be way more weary about coming out later. And like I said, that poor kid, I saw the reactions. They were not good for quite a long time. James Charles depicts it in his video. That's like the second you came out with a James Charles video, that you were instantly, like, internet famous and just put on this pedestal, which just isn't true. Because, like I said, it took such a long time for anyone to even believe you. So for the fact there to be no victims of James Charles, that's just blatantly false. And there's no way to convince me otherwise, to be frank. And then after that, of course, he gets into the lighter topics, which you shouldn't be doing. You don't have the right to do that. Because also you haven't been away long enough that you can convince me or a lot of people, mostly obviously like adults, that you've really learned anything. I think what happened was he saw Tati's video and he went, oh, she danced around it, so I can too. Excuse me. The fact of that is, however, Miss Tati Westbrook took an entire year off. Because he literally did the same thing as her, like, step by step, right? So he took the break. Then he deleted the previous video admitting to, you know, whatever, and then says in his video that I didn't want to keep it up as something to come back to on my channel. James, your break was like a maternity leave. or like an injury break from work. Like, you didn't, like, Tati Westbrook took an entire year also with no social media presence. Like, Peter Mon showed in his video that James Charles was still liking tweets and replies and all these kinds of things. Like, James Charles was still lurking around, which wasn't the case for Tati Westbrook. Like, Tati Westbrook was able to kind of come back with her video because she had been gone for so long. James Charles, on the other hand, can't just kind of mimic her when it was a completely different situation. Also, Tati Westbrook wasn't committing crimes. Like, there's such a negation to the entirety of the seriousness of this. It's just so insane. For him to start with his light tone and then to go into the seriousness and then to merge into the lighter topics after, for a video like this, just doesn't even make sense. Like, I just don't understand why he even thought he could do this. But I guess he can, though, because parasocial relations with children have a particular strength of being able to get past your previous actions. Because there's a certain naivety present with kids that's not present with adults. By the way, I'm referring to kids as anyone who is under 18, but as far as that mentality, definitely under 16. Right. So there's a certain naivety present with kids that's kind of like a live and let learn type of mentality, which is, you know, somewhat fair because you also lack the life experience to see that perhaps that might not be the best way to go about things. However, for him to take advantage of that by forming the video the way that he did is insane, because he proceeds to talk about his birthday, and no one else has addressed this for some reason, which is really interesting to me, because he goes at the beginning of the video by saying that, like, this has, like, ruined his, or messed up his brand, and, like, how dare these people chase clout because it harms him. Then to talk about this, like, ridiculously expensive and privileged birthday that he has. So James Charles spends a whole bunch of the video talking about how he spent this, like, time off reflecting on himself and thinking about what he's done, but then describes the actual events that occurred, like, as far as, like, a timeline, as, like, him, like, taking time off and getting sleep, getting his vaccination, and then having this, like, super excessive, expensive birthday at Camp Charles at Coachella. It's like, what have you actually done? Like, no one talks about that he spends the video, because I think what he knows, which, because like I said, you cannot deny that James Charles isn't, like, super, super calculated. I think that he thought that all of the, like, drama channels, you know, or, like, the Smoky Glow and all those kinds of people would jump out after he says, I'm switching gears now into, like, that fun part, quote-unquote, of the video, right? Except the fun part of the video just negates everything he just said. Because he's saying that he spent the time having his birthday, getting his shots, the world's going back to normal, I'm hanging out with my friends. Which in itself is kind of ironic and funny, given the fact that he never cared about COVID at all. Because he spent the whole, like, he was going to, what's that place called? You know that steak restaurant in Los Angeles that everyone goes to, right? Like, he spent the time going there with, like, the D'Amelios or whatever, and then not caring about COVID. We all remember, was it Bryce Hall's birthday? You know, which was, like, April or May of last year, when the numbers were, like, tens of thousands a day in LA County alone, and they were in a state of emergency. But James Charles didn't care. So for him to all of a sudden be saying the world's going back to normal, which is such a funny comment to me, because it's like it was normal for you the whole time. Your privilege, which you've inflicted for this whole video, is just so blatant and, like, obviously undeniable that I just can't believe you don't see it. There's, like, that crazy lack of self-awareness, which that exact lack of self-awareness that became present in 2019 is what built Bye's sister to be as much as it was, right? If James Charles hadn't done the weird, like, assless chaps Coachella outfit, plus the $500 meet and greet tickets, plus the, like, social media rampages before going into Tati Westbrook's video, didn't have that consistently building up ego, then it wouldn't have had it just oh my god. I will have to repress that. I'm gonna have to repress that one. Okie dokie, Smokey. Plan B, I guess. Fenty Beauty Confetti. So now I lost my train of thought because it fell out. Oh, yes. So the exact privilege that he's weaponizing and that ego that he's running off of is exactly what stacked him up to be knocked down so hard a couple years ago. In the same situation that he consistently weaponizes in every possible opportunity that he has. That's why it's so crazy to me that he thinks that he could just come back like this. Because the ego is what sank him the first time. Anyways, this is the makeup look. I just want to end off the video, right, with, I also just want to mention that, like, the low tone bothers me, but the only credit I think I'm going to give him is that he said that the artist that he was mimicking the look for didn't have any association with him, and he actually credited her this time, which I find that really commendable to some extent. Because he's looking out for her. He's looking out to make sure that she doesn't get any flack that she didn't deserve. Because she obviously doesn't deserve any, right? Because she doesn't have an association with James Charles. She just does her makeup looks, right? So, in conclusion, yikes. Like, I literally just wrote the word yikes. Right. I wanted to end off in, like, somewhat of a positive note by saying, like, at least he, like, told everyone that the artist didn't have any association with him, right? But that's, like, the only, I think, good point I could find in the video, because this is deplorable. Simply deplorable, right? Like, you are trying to snake yourself out of minor misconduct allegations, which is just so twisted. Like, it's like Bill Cosby getting out of prison, bro. It just, like, doesn't make any sense. Obviously, they're not comparable situations as far as the treatment of the people, but I'm just saying the fact that, like, it sometimes just feels hopeless that, like, celebrities and stuff can get away with anything, right? But that's what Foucault's mentioning too, is that the people that are in power are setting the standard about what you can get away with. And Sokiko makes this point in her video too, where you have to make sure that even though he wasn't, like, completely canceled, he wasn't deplatformed, yada yada yada, there's still hope for the president to be set. Because if people don't continue to establish a president, then there is no hope ever. Because if you just disregard it and accept it, and not have any sort of interventionism regarding it, it will just continue to get worse and worse and worse. So I do think that you should still hold James Charles accountable, even though it just kind of feels like there's not much that can be done. But you can't think of the fact that people that are rising stars know what the president is and what's not acceptable for them. And this prevents more people like him gaining power over time. Anyways, that's the video. Next video is going to be a podcast. I guess not Gabby Hanna related because she hasn't uploaded anything. I hope you guys like the makeup look. Let me know how you feel. I'm going to try to make my opinions and stuff not, like, super disheveled when I edit the video, because I don't know how it went in regards to how I was doing it. A little bit too much bronzer. Okay, you guys have a great day. Bye.
Chef Ramsay's gonna love my peanut butter spaghetti crab tacos. They're the best on the East Coast.
He said they were rancid and he found a dead marmot's head in the back of the freezer.
That's a family recipe!
I'm just glad the cameras are here so he can't hit me.
I don't see what's wrong with the lobster grease pie. I mean, it's not haute cuisine. Not everyone gets to train in London, England, Europe. But I'm used to feeding big, strong Staten Island boys.
My father wanted me to stay working in the restaurant, but I actually had dreams of going to law school.
No, you didn't!
Sweetheart, come here.
Okay.
Would you eat that?
Oh, no, Chef Daddy. Ramsay.